And welcome Don Hartung, founder and CEO of H3Systems. This is our ongoing series on business security where we're talking about anything from computers and networks to policies and procedures. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Chris.
So, Don, in doing this series, what's your goal? What was it that kind of got you to say, you know what, I need to sit down and do this?
Well, it's very interesting that you look at the history of computers and security, and it's an ongoing thing. Every day you read about something new. And for me, I felt I've got knowledge that I want to impart to others. You're going to get business. I'm going to do business. We're going to get things going. But the amount of data out there, if I can impart that to you in a way you understand, that's the goal that I had. That's what my vision is.
And I was just going to say, it almost the other way to look at it is distilling down what's out there into something that makes sense to someone like me.
Exactly. Not that you don't understand it, but we all have our talents and our knowledge.
So today we're going to start with Target and the data breach that they had in 2014. And we were just sitting down to record this intro. And what did we find out? That Target is paying $67 million to the credit card companies and processors for their role in that data breach.
Right. And that's not you and I.
That's not you and I.
That's to be determined.
That's still to come. So what we're going to do then is talk about what happened with the Target breach.
And with that, it's a business issue, but it really does affect you and I, how we handle our concerns and our cares, because outside of the Target issue that we'll talk about, there's new banking Trojans out there that will actually collect your banking information from your computers and your systems.
One of the things that's also really important to understand for the listeners of this really applies to a small business without any IT support at all to an enterprise with a full-on IT department, doesn't it? In other words, what we're not trying to do is just tie this to one specific area of business.
Not at all. We are integrated and intertwined with business and our personal information completely. So you really can't do that. 100 years ago, 50 years ago, yeah, you did it. But today, everything is in the digital world.
So let's just start with an overview of what happened with Target. In 2014, there was a pretty huge, one of many breaches of personal information that was from Target stores. Talk a little bit about how that whole thing went down, what hackers or whatever we're calling them these days were able to get, and kind of what the impact has been since.
You bet. So the Target breach. Target is a multinational company with lots of resources and money, security teams in place. They have the resources, they have money, they have staff. They got hacked, right? Compromised. I mean, the hack is the big media word, hack. Just call it a compromise is what it was. How did it occur? So the experts in the field have all clearly stated it was done through a third party. So the understanding is that the HVAC vendor, they were the ones who were compromised. Their system was malware hacked. It got compromised. And they had permission to get into the network for Target. They got in. There were alerts that went off to notify the security staff, but that's part of the problem. Without getting technical, that's part of the problem with security alerts. If you can imagine all the traffic that goes on, there's a lot of it. So some fundamental processes failed. That's step number one. That's important to understand. That could have relayed a lot of it. But number two was that once they got in, they compromised the server, and then they compromised the point of sale systems. So while Target wasn't a direct hack, Target was indirectly attacked, which is how a lot of these happen. They don't go necessarily right after you. They may try it. They'll probe.
Right.
But when they realize that your walls are up and defenses are there, they're going to find another way in. And this, which they did.
So the story is the systems at the HVAC vendor get compromised. That compromise ends up on one of the technician's machines. The technician goes in, he plugs into the systems that are on the network. Everything's on the network now. So they plug into the network, and that exploit that's on his system now gets into Target systems. And what's fascinating, talk a little bit about, because at that point, there's some kind of communication from that exploit that's made it onto target systems to whoever's running this thing.
Right. So that's the command and control. So malware, the different variations of malware, but basically they have what's called a command and control. Once it logs in, it calls home. Once it calls home, then they can use an exploited system or server, could be your computer at home, potentially, to launch additional attacks against it. And then once they're in, we haven't talked about this, but currently it's 209 days of systems that have reported compromises, 209 days undetected that somebody's been in their network, and it was found by a third party afterwards. And then it's about 63 to 68 days from that point to stop the breach and try to start remediating the issues. So think about it, 209 days that somebody was in, and probably even potentially longer with Target. And those are just the ones that have been reported.
Right.
So important to know that once they're in and they've exploited it, what did we see in the news? Target got hacked. Because Target was the one who was truly compromised. But it goes further. So that's where we come back to policies, procedures, following them. Trust is great. I trust you. I trust my employees. But as Ronald Reagan liked to say, and not we're getting political, trust but verify.
Yeah.
You need to verify those things. And if you're following those procedures, the probability is smaller of being compromised.
Well, and isn't part of what you're bringing to the table, especially for a business, is you're creating systems that prevent trust from becoming an issue.
Exactly.
In other words, you're saying, hey, we're going to help put systems in so that you're not in IT in a situation where, or employee at your computer where they're asking, what have you been doing?
Right.
And trust becomes an issue.
And the other thing is, so as an example, there's a device out there called the USB killer. It's a flash drive, a pen drive. I can take that drive and plug it into a computer, and I can destroy that computer. It's that easy, right? And it's unfortunate, but that's kind of where, if there's policies and procedures, that's where you say, well, we don't allow any third-party items without being checked to be in my network.
Right. And so those are the types of things that you can help to put policies and procedures in place around. One of the things that I would think is really critical in your business with H3 Systems is helping everybody. I mean, I think a lot of people think about policies and procedures, that's something that sits in a binder. But your goal is to have living policies and procedures around things that are going to protect the business at all levels.
Exactly. And it's always the case. You think about a policy being put on a shelf and it's dusty and you pull it out when you need it. But you do it without thinking about it today. You're going to go to Tahoe for the winter because it's nice and snowy. What do? Well, you have a, quote, policy and a procedure by saying, I'm going to make sure my tires aren't bald.
Right.
They got air in them. I've got oil.
Right.
I got gas. So you already do these things anyway. It's just when we hear the term policy and procedure, we kind of get a little weirded out by, that's kind of businessy. And it's just a process we follow. You do it today. You tell your employees, cash out at the end of the day, lock the door before you cash out and count the change, put it in the vault, whatever you do. You have them already. You do them every day.
But those are the important ones, Don.
Yes. And in addition to those important ones are these. And that's what I do. And that certainly is the thing that, in the end, it just makes it better for everybody. It makes you feel better at night as an owner of a business to know that you've at least done the due diligence, because if the compromise comes and you have to explain to all the people that you have their personal identifiable information, and you got to explain to all of them why they have to get a new credit card and do identity theft prevention and all those other things. When they come back to you and say, well, what did you do to protect it? And you can come back and say, here's what I've done. You're probably going to be better off, and they're probably going to still do business with you.
So it's a really good point. When we were talking about trust earlier, we kind of think of it as from a top-down perspective. I'm the manager. What have you been up to, employee, or what customer? And really, the trust issue is almost more important the other way. We just don't want to be able to show that we've done everything we can for an employee that he can trust his employer, or a customer that they can trust the vendor, the company that's selling them something, right?
Oh, exactly. And what did Target do? They gave you the identity theft monitoring for a year, right? Everyone kind of either poo-pooed it or said, okay, thank you.
Right.
But they did more than that. They went on an active campaign. They talked about the things that they did. It was made clear that, yeah, they just weren't sitting on their hands. Yeah,
Right.
Mistakes happen. It happens. But here's what we've done. And here's what we're doing going forward. We talked about Target. Right, they're a big company. They have lots of money behind them and lots of resources, and they still had the issue. And you're a small business. Why me? Well, I can't afford all that. What can I do? Here's the way to understand it. Theft is theft. We're looking at doing everything we can from a business perspective to prevent theft from occurring.
Mm-hmm.
You go into the shops during Christmas, and you're going to notice that things are locked down a little tighter. The clothes aren't quite as freely available. They got a chain through them. Why is that? Because we want to prevent those things from happening. The same things that the big businesses do, the small businesses can do. It's not about having a lot of money. It's not about having big, expensive infrastructure, always. It's about doing those things that you as a business owner can do to help prevent that from happening, and that people will move on to the next one, right? That, you don't want to move on to your neighbor, but again, they're not going to attack you, or they're going to try but move on. Those are things that can be done effectively, and they can certainly make a business much more responsive to their customers, which is who you're really there for.
And really, I think at some level also it's about, there's great learning in Targets and Office of Personnel Management that you're able to bring to a small business that they wouldn't necessarily ever think of. You're bringing new thinking that's relevant and current.
Most certainly. It's those things that I do know, that I know the small business and the businesses aren't thinking about, because why would they?
Right.
They're in the business of selling a product, selling a service. That's what they're there to do, and they're trying to be the expert, or they are the expert.
So thank you, Target, for the learning that we're able to pass on.
We all get to pay a little bit more money and stuff, but certainly you bet that the big companies do give us the ability to learn quite a bit and understand what we can do differently for all business. So I can bring that to the business community that doesn't have the opportunity to have, the $400 an hour team come in and do those things that
Right.
they just can't afford.
Right. But you have the ability to bring that in.
But I bring it in.
If you're in business, whether you're C-level, management, or IT, you're the guy to talk to, because you are familiar with working in all of those levels and can bring almost the glue to the process to help people to communicate better and to get safer and more secure in a way that makes sense to everybody.
Most certainly. And, you say, look, I'm the glue. I actually look at it as I'm the conduit between everybody, right? So I understand what you say. I'm technical. I know what you mean. I can then explain it so that we are all on the same page. Businesses will be more productive. People will be happy at work.
Don Hartung, founder and CEO of H3Systems. You can be reached at 287-7376 and at H3Systems.com. That's 3, the number 3, H3Systems.com. Thanks for taking the time with us today.
Thank you.